Hi, this is RGK and today I will show you Mothergunship. It's a game developed by Grip Digital on Terrible Posture Games, previously responsible for Tower of Guns. The latter was pure roguelite FPS, dying in its gigantic rooms full of projectiles and starting over from the beginning. Mothergunship shares Tower of Guns DNA, but brings it towards a new direction. To thoroughly explain Mothergunship, I will explore three main topics. First, this weapon crafting system that the game is so proud of. Secondly, the game structure. Thirdly, the combats. So let's start with weapon crafting. As you play the game, you can buy three different categories of parts: guns, also called barrels, modifiers, and connectors. Two different weapons can be built out of the parts, one for each hand. There are only two rules. Barrels must face forward, and the different parts cannot physically overlap. And then we use the connectors as if they were Legos in order to add space between the barrels so they don't overlap. And modifiers can be applied wherever there is some free space. These affect things like spread or fire rate. In principle, as long as you have components, you can do whatever you want with them and go crazy. In reality, it's not so simple. There is no ammunition in the game, but instead, there are energy bars that regenerate automatically. The more guns there are on a weapon, the more a shot will deplete energy. So what's the point of having tons of guns combined into a single weapon if you can only shoot every 4th of July? Not too useful. Also, if you put too many things on a weapon, you can end up cluttering your own screen. Even if for a brief moment you feel like Arnold Schwarzenegger, if you don't see where you shoot or where you set foot, you can end up injuring someone else or fall into lava. At first I was pestering against this, then I realized that I needed to build my weapons downwards rather than upwards. And then, even if it's tempting to put as many guns as you can on a weapon, it can be a mistake to mix unrelated weapon types. For example, if you mix a shotgun and a long-range weapon on the same hand, you will waste your energy without any efficiency. Thus, it's better to keep machine guns together, rocket launchers together, and so on, so you can maximize damage output as well as usefulness for each shot. With the risk to block the view, and because there is no good reason to mix weapons that are completely different, I find that gun crafting is not such a good idea. Of course, there is pleasure in crafting a mutated gun from scraps found here and there, but in terms of functionality, it does not add anything. It's just like picking up a gun doing plus 10 damage rather than a gun doing plus 5 damage. Yes, it's visually impressive, but it does not justify taking up half the screen. At the end of the day, it's a bit like Borderlands while disguising its RPG element. Something rather annoying is that the parts picked up end up cluttering a long inventory of stuff when going back to HQ. It's displayed as a list rather than on full screen, and it would have been better to stack similar items rather than scroll them one by one. An HQ inventory is limited to 100 slots, so sometimes I had to waste time finding out what I could get rid of, and it was tedious, boring, and unnecessary. Next, let's talk about the general structure of this game. As I said, there is an HQ in which we collect weapon parts. It's also there that we can use our experience points to improve the exoskeleton of our main character, with improvements like more jumps or quicker energy regen to be able to shoot for longer when using powerful badass guns. Oh, I almost forgot to talk about the story, but I have to, it's related to the structure. There is an armada of alien robot ships that invaded Earth. The planet has been lost for 10 years. The Resistance is now attempting to destroy the Mothergunship to take back the planet. If I say it like that, it sounds rather serious and dramatic. However, characters and dialogues are completely bonkers, and it was surprisingly fun. There are things like the AI of our ship attempting to analyze data cores only to get infected by a virus displaying ads inside the ship, and then the AI gets traumatized by this event. Or there is a moment when we are attacking an enemy ship. The enemy robots ask what we are doing here. The characters say that we are just delivering pizza, and then security is deactivated. The game does not take itself seriously, and it works very well. The adventure does not take place in the enemy mothership right away. First, we have to infiltrate a ton of enemy ships for various reasons. And that's when the roguelite element comes into place, as when we die we lose progress and weapons. But we only lose what we had since we attacked the last ship, and then we respawn in HQ and can try again this 10 rooms mission without having to start over the whole game. What can be a bother though, is to lose your favorite weapons. There is a black market in which you can sometimes recover them, and other times the guns appear in sponsored missions. These missions have a fixed starting equipment, which pushes the player to experiment with those parts rather than what we were used to. This adds a welcome layer of variety. Apart from these sponsored missions, it's normally possible to handpick a few parts to bring in. Only a few can be brought. There are not many slots, so the rest of the weapon has to come from what's found during the mission itself. Some of our reviewers complain that they could not keep their overpowered weapons as they are always dismantled each time we start over. But I actually like to be forced to start from simple guns. We can feel vulnerable again. And also, we lose all the stuff that was cluttering the screen, and as I mentioned earlier, it does add variety. If you would like to keep your big gun for a while, you can try the endless mode that is unlocked at some point during the campaign. Going back to the structure of the game, I found it to be a very solid foundation, and I had fun planning my invasions and switching between weapons. But the more I played, the more I kept seeing the same things over and over while my character's progress was way too slow. What I used to find a great idea became a useless grind, and the hours I sank into the game seemed indistinguishable from one another. This is the perfect transition to finally talk about the last part of the experience, the combat. Arenas to fight in are randomly picked by the game, some are well done and the player can take advantage of their speed to have a ton of fun, but some others are way too cramped to move and it's annoying. There are moments of pure joy in an arena fight, and then moments of boredom trying to find where the last enemy was hiding. Just like in Tower of Guns, the game is very generous with bumpers and letting the player stack an insane number of jumps. In HQ there are some rare permanent upgrades, while in the mission there are a ton of temporary upgrades. Eventually it becomes possible to almost fly as if you had a jetpack, and then some battles are a beautiful aerial dance, when there aren't lasers or projectiles blocking off huge chunks of the room. In the demo version, the enemies were too black to be readable. This was slightly improved in the final game. But then there remains the problem that some enemies look too much like the background and can be hard to differentiate them from invincible wall cannons. Sometimes I was uselessly trying to shoot invincible traps on the walls, or I forgot to shoot at legitimate targets that I could destroy. As to the combat themselves, it's like a bullet hell with a ton of stuff to avoid. There are all the interesting enemy archetypes in this game, those that explode, those that attack from a short distance, those that fire from afar. You will have to prioritize your targets. There are also enemies with a lot of health that can tank the pacing. It's okay for some robots that feel like a mini-boss, but it's less fun when you have to spend a century shooting at a static cannon. The player gets weapons of increasing damage output, but enemy levels get higher too, with more health. Remember when I told you that there are similarities with Borderlands. Another problem is that there are a lot of big rooms with enemies on the ceilings and such, so you can forget about using short-range weapons like a shotgun or grenades. They are taking up space for no reason in this game. The feel of shooting is different according to the guns and their combination. Personally I found railguns quite good, and the rocket launchers were not too exciting, but I found them useful. We are shooting robots, they do not bleed, but they break into pieces when they get shot, so it's still satisfying even though not the most exciting. Talking about breaking into pieces, robots leave behind experience, health or money to buy weapons. Sadly, this all disappears way too quickly, so it pushes the player to take unnecessary risks such as throwing themselves at an enemy they just sniped across the room. This is quite annoying in this game, as on top of that, randomness can be exceedingly frustrating. I mean things like not receiving a single coin after clearing a room that was overflowing with enemies. It makes no sense. Also, the way shops to buy weapons parts appear. Sometimes there are a lot of them while I had no money, sometimes there were none while I was rich. I cleared entire missions without encountering a single shop. Losing a game because it's so inconsistent is not a particularly pleasing experience. To summarize the combats, they can be fast-paced and awesome, or cramped and bothersome. Some weapons kick some serious ass, others are not great but they do their job, some are completely useless. Globally, it's a bit repetitive and hampered by inconsistent loot. Before concluding, a short talk about the graphics. The colors are amazing. The game is very nice to look at, and the field of view can also be changed. In the negative points, a lot of rooms are less incredible and varied than in Tower of Guns, and most enemies are ugly tin cans. We are finally drawing near the conclusion, and I am sorry if this video was longer than usual, but the game is quite different from other FPS games and deserved more analysis. Also, I don't exactly recommend buying it, so you can still have a good idea of how the game works, for your personal culture. And also maybe you are interested in the online co-op, the developers have planned to add it further down the road. When I played the demo version, I found the experience to be catastrophic as I was quickly fitted with big weapons inside small rooms and it was unreadable. The final experience has a good taste of providing a structure that decreases power creeping at regular intervals, and there are lots of interesting rooms even if others are still way too cramped. Also, I learned to build my weapon in a way that does not break the screen, so it's far less disastrous than I initially felt, but I still have mixed feelings. I had a good time with the game, I enjoy violent and arena FPS games, and I had fun testing the weapon and increasing their powers. Also, I enjoy the dialogues. Thus, I would say that it's a very solid game, and hours can easily be spent on it without regret. But if you are very demanding, it's not an excellent game nor is it a must-have. The concept is attractive but a bit shaky, For each good idea comes a bunch of flaws that are more or less troublesome according to personal sensitivity. And at the price of $25, I clearly don't recommend it. You might wait for sales if you enjoy this concept. I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye!